The David Blunkett interview for the Fabian Review, summer 2008.
Is there a sense that private education is still something that Labour has to leave as just being too difficult to think about?
I think there are some particular issues which have a historic significance in terms of which way is the Labour Party facing, and are we, if you like, looking backwards over our shoulder to agendas of the past. And I think that there is still a feeling, this is not confined to private education, that accepting that it exists and it will always exist and that people are going to use it, and many Labour supporters and Labour Party members use it, does that mean that it's off limits in terms of talking about how best to integrate something that exists with a system that is designed to provide on merit and on genuine social mobility grounds opportunity for all? But it does mean that the divide of opportunity through life continues to be emphasised, and in some ways in real terms increased. You can see this with the statistics that were put together by the Sutton Trust in relation to the very marginal changes in where High Court judges have been to school and which university they've been to, and that applies right across the higher echelons of the legal profession, of the civil service still. And therefore there is a correlation between the school, the university, the job, and the opportunity of influence from those positions on our society as a whole. When I was in government, I had responsibility in the end for the Charity Commission, and it was under my auspices that we took the decision that we would firstly reform the charity law and the Charity Commission, and the law didn't actually go through until I'd gone, but we started it and we prepared the initial legislation, the consultation, and that was on the premise that you had to earn charitable status, and I think the more we can do that, the better. So I think that if people expect privileges, because that's what it is in relation to their tax status, then earning it is really crucial and being shown to do so, and that doesn't just mean taking a handful of children from deprived areas. It means reach out. It means actually opening up the opportunity of twinning.
Can I ask you a question about what sort of tied into that, which is about university admission? Do you think there's a need to, for particularly the elite universities of Oxford, to change their admission criteria to give more weight to, say, A's from the A level from tough inner city comprehensives, to kind of give more access to very, very good state school students who are just not getting in?
Well, from about the year 2000, they made the right noises and said they were going to do so, and although the structures of Oxford and Cambridge make this difficult, because as we've seen, and there's great resistance to bringing Oxford in particular into the 21st century, and the lip service paid at Cambridge hasn't yielded as much fruit as anyone would have liked, there was at least an acknowledgement that there was a challenge. The problem is, well, yeah, but it's slow, because the problem is that nobody's prepared to acknowledge that you've got to go right back to primary education to change this. So you've got two challenges. One is that the universities themselves are prepared to reach out at a very early stage, and not just to say that families or children should come and experience the idea that, you know, universities for them. I mean, that's a good idea, but it doesn't take us very much further, because what I've discovered is that the universities, when you challenge them, the top sort of 5 universities in academic terms or international status, they say they're acting fairly, but they then drop back on the excuse, but although this young person's done very well at A level, they don't fit in, and what they do is they actually end up saying, but the young person themselves felt alienated and they didn't feel comfortable, particularly with the collegiate system. And therefore, you've almost got a reverse process going on where the system they're operating is then used as a raison d'etre for saying that youngsters wouldn't be comfortable there.
Do you think they're hiding behind the interview process?
Well, there's still that, and I come back to the point that those who have been through a particular system themselves have a real conceptual difficulty in understanding what we're talking about, because for them it's perfectly natural to interview in a particular way and to expect a particular approach from that young person. Knowledge, background, their presentation, and their understanding of how that particular university operates. They have a presumption that from their parentage and from the school they've gone to, they'll be familiar with the language and with the kind of interview techniques, and of course they're not. I think that the Higher Education Funding Council and the funding for post-16 education, part is now going to be devolved to local government, and I think there needs to be a long, hard look at the resourcing from 2010 through local government for areas of very low take-up of both a post-16 and an HE. And I think the government's got 2 years to start to think that through, because if we use the existing distribution system for grants to local government, they'll merely reinforce disadvantage. When I was a child, you had a very, very affluent, but relatively in percentage terms, small number of those who were middle class. You had a very large working class and a very small hardcore of those who weren't working and were really badly off. And what's changed is that there's a much bigger, reasonably well off core of people whose expectations are now on a par with the smaller group 50 years ago, hence the rise from 8% to 40% in people went to university. When I went to university, it was 8%. I know nobody who came from miles around where I lived who went to university, and I discovered they were no brighter than the people I grew up with, but they just had a different privileged opportunity. That 40% does reflect the big change in socioeconomic demographics, but we've ended up with quite a difficult core of people, geographic as well as individual, where that aspiration is still not there, and where the circumstances around them make it very difficult to break through.
Didn't you later find it quite hard to talk about class, looking back at it, particularly towards the beginning?
Well, I think it's difficult to talk about class just because people's understanding of the term class has changed. When I was a child, the big industrial enterprises, the big steel and engineering works, had almost an adult education system built into them. We're talking here about craft skills. We weren't talking about just mass production. Thousands of people in what was an industrial village within a city, and their time at work was of course about earning a living, but it also was about social interaction, and people felt that they had an affinity with each other. They earned much the same, they lived much the same, they drank much the same, and their experiences of politics were informed in that way. And therefore they felt themselves to be part of, in quotes, a class. People don't feel that anymore.
Is that a consequence of social mobility, do you think?
It's a consequence of massive social and economic change and of globalisation, and it's broken down people's sense of what socio-economic group they belong to. I mean, the great challenge, I think, for us on the left is not to agonise about knocking people off further up. What we need is a ladder that actually provides the fairness to get to the same point and to be able to have the same opportunity. Which is why I don't want to say we should say fewer of the better off should get their children into higher education so that people from my constituency can get there. I want to say let's expand the opportunity in higher education and make it fair as to where they get. We don't, you know, we're not going to offer everybody a chance to go to Eton or Winchester or a particular college in Oxford or Cambridge. We're going to offer you a different route to being able to succeed, but we need to change the society we live in so that if you really do have the talent and the ability, you don't get knocked out of being a senior civil servant or a senior judge or a senior medic because of your background. And at the moment, you still do. You are still trumped by the old system. Call it class if you want, but you're still trumped by it.